What's going on, y'all? So in today's video, I'm going to be testing the sensitivities of various content creators such as Jinxie and Skype. I'm going to give you my honest opinion on whether or not they are beginner friendly, good for recoil, tracing, flicking, basically everything that has to do with sense. I will let you know how they fare. Be sure to let me know in the comments any other top controller champions you want me to try out, maybe even your own sensitivity, and if it looks intriguing, I'll give it a try. So today we're going to start things off with an up-and-coming creator known as MingoJCE. You guys may have heard him from the Jinxie tournaments that happen every Saturday. He has beaten him 2 times in a row in finals of these $10,000 tourneys, so he's definitely making a name for himself. And on TikTok, he is known to have some of the best aim on console. Be sure to go check that out right now. He has some of the craziest clips I've seen. Now for his sense, it's going to be 3390, and he's going between 5 and 3 dead zones, but right now he's sticking to 3. And for the ADS, it is 41, 50, 51. So I'm going to be starting off the testing in the shooting range. I'm going to have the target movement speed on idle, and I'm just going to practice flicking with MingoSense. Right, that's good enough. So it feels a little slow for me, and it's not the flickiest sense in the world, but it could definitely get the job done. Those are a bit exaggerated flicks, those aren't very realistic, but the ones that it's going to matter is when they're barely off your crosshair and you're able to flick quickly to readjust, and it does a pretty good job of that. So now let's test out the tracing of MingoSense. I'm going to put it to headshot only so I don't kill them instantly, so we can actually see how well this sense traces. So as you can see, it is super easy to trace on this sense, and with the good amount of flicking that you can do with it, it's really easy to flick, stop immediately, and start to trace. It's a really good middle ground sense I can see. So based on the testing, I can tell that this is a really strong middle ground sense. It's not too flicky where it takes a lot of practice and skill to be able to use it, but it's also not too slow where you feel really clunky and bot-like. It's perfect middle ground sense, so you can still flick to an enemy and also trace at the same time with general ease. I'm really liking the feel of this sense based on the shooting range, but let's actually go shoot some enemies in TDM. So now we're going to move on to the Twitch streamer Sky and his sense. You guys probably have heard of him. He is the second biggest console streamer behind Jinxie, of course. His sense is 4100, 10-3, 19, 35, and 35. A considerably much slower sense than MingoJCE, so let's test it out. Since it's a really slow sense, the tracing, of course, is going to be very easy. The lower the sense, the better the tracing. The higher sense, the faster the flicks and easier. Let's test out how it flicks, although I don't think it's going to be too great because it is quite low of a sense at only 35 ADS. As you guys can see, the closer flicks are a lot more realistic and manageable. But the farther it gets, the harder it gets, because I'm basically pushing my stick all the way to its like max point to get hit. So it looked pretty good, but I could tell you now that it's not going to be too realistic due to the fact that on a lot of those flicks, I was hitting the end of the stick on the side of the controller. And when you're trying to flick and hit shots, you want it to be more in that diameter of the rotations itself and not just hitting the end of the stick and waiting for your sense to catch up, because you don't have control over that. You have to wait for it. I would rather be in control of the stick at all times, being able to flick around, than waiting for the stick to catch up based on the sensitivity. Kind of hard to explain, but I think you guys get where I'm going at. So the pros of this sensitivity is that it is very easy to trace, but the con is it's not too flicky and it's very slow and sluggish in my opinion. But for people that like the slow sensitivity, and if you have a good enough crosshair placement like Skype, you could definitely make a sense like this work. What the fuck is bro doing? Now, before we move on to the next sensitivity, I would like to give a brief shout out to the sponsor of this video, Thrustmaster, and their line of custom Xbox controllers. This one I have is the eSwap Pro controller, and what makes this controller so special is you are able to take out the thumbstick completely from the socket, as you can see, and replace them at a moment's notice. It is a magnetic stick, so all you have to do is just plop it right in, and it works instantly. You could change it mid-game if you need to. Now, personally, I think this is an ingenious design. As someone who is very prone to getting stick drift based on my playstyle, I'm quite rough with my controllers. It is much cheaper to replace one of these $20 thumbsticks than the entire controller itself, which is what I've been having to do recently. So it actually makes these controllers very affordable and worth your investment. Of course, like any Elite, the eSwap Pro controller comes with two back paddles that you can bind to any button you may like. I personally bind it to the crouch button. The eSwap Pro controller also comes with a textured grip for your palms, and as someone that deals with sweaty, clammy hands all the time, it helps with that issue. I don't slip as much. The buttons themselves are also very clicky and well built. I always get an issue where when I'm clicking my button too much, it starts to get stuck in the socket, and I've never had that issue with the eSwap Pro controller. I will be leaving a link in the description for you guys to check out these for yourself. They are also now available at Walmart. Now, without further ado, let's move on to our next sensitivity. Let's move on to the man himself, Jinxie 35 100 55 23 30 33. Let's start off the testing with how it flicks. I already know it's not going to be great because it's such a low sense, but let's give it a test anyways. Of course, it has the same issue as Skype. You keep hitting the wall of your analog stick, and it's just not realistic. For these close ones, like right there, I could see it working, but you're going to need good crosshair placement at all times for it to be effective. So if you have bad crosshair placement and you're always flicking everywhere, then it's not going to be a good sense for you. But then again, if you have bad crosshair placement, you should probably just work on that anyways and not find a sense to fix that. All right, now let's test out the tracing. Headshots on and run. I just noticed this, but these low senses are tiring. You got to move your thumb so much to aim. I'm used to the flickiness of high sense, and this shit is starting to tire out my thumb. Oh my god. Damn. So as you can see, similar results to Sky. It's basically the same thing, just a little bit of a lower sense. Personally, I am not a big fan of these lower senses, but hey, if it works for you, it works for you. Let's go test something a bit higher. So now we're going to move on to Rockstar Speedy Sense. One of the OG PlayStation GOATs, he is considered one of the best of all time. His sense is 40, 94, 55, 37, 52. Pretty similar to MingoSense, but just a little bit higher. Based off that teen, I can already tell it's going to be more of an advanced sense for high sense users. The vertical is on 40, which is a little bit too high for most people. So let's try it out in tracing and see how it feels. However, since it is a higher sense, it is going to be more skill based, and you're going to have to do a lot of practicing to be able to get good at tracing on this sense. So it's not too bad for me, but I personally have had a ton of practice on high sense, so I can't speak for most people. But if you guys like high sense and you like the flicky movements, this might be the sense for you. So now let's show off how it flicks. It is definitely a flicky sense, so it should be pretty fun. Oh yeah. The higher vertical makes it really easy to go from a standing to a lower target. However, it is going to take a lot of practice if you want to use this sense. But it's fun, it's fast, I enjoy it. Let's try it on TM.